All right, you guys, welcome back. I know it's been quite a while since we've done an actual stream on this channel. Everyone's like, why don't you stream? Look, it's a very busy time. All right, we're trying to make content. We're trying to do everything. But since election night is officially now 7 days away, which is crazy to think about, the entire process just went by so fast. I figure we'll do like an election preview stream. And this won't be our last one, but I want to discuss a lot about maybe the current state of the race, maybe my prediction, talk about a little bit of news. I mean, we got to talk obviously about this Puerto Rico controversy, quote unquote, and whether or not it will actually affect the election. Also, Tim Walz playing Madden with AOC, because he's just such a real human being, you know. So a lot to talk about tonight, folks. But first, do us a favor. If you're enjoying the content, be sure to hit that like button. And since we are live, feel free to super chat. And programming alert, we will be live on election night. Okay, that is officially locked in. I don't know exactly what time, but be sure to stay tuned for that. And probably maybe 1 to 2 streams between now and the election, because we got a lot to talk about. But joining us is back for the first time since I think the New Hampshire primary, right?
Yes.
VinceDao Live, I guess, chief polling analyst Ryan Manning. Welcome back, Ryan. How have you been?
I've been good. Thanks for having me back on. It's been a while, you know, since the last real election we had in New Hampshire, but I'm really excited. The election really snuck up, I feel like, on all of us. It went by so fast. The summer went quick, and
it did.
A lot of craziness has gone on since the last time I was here, but I'm excited to break some things down.
No, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's say hi really quickly to some of the people in our live chat. Shout out Justin. Thank you for becoming a Dow Pack General member. Shout out to Zachary. Good to see you again. Sheeny Beanie, Scrappy. I know we haven't been live in a very long time, but I figure since we want to hype up the election night one a little bit, we might as well do like a brief little casual live. So this is basically a round table. I mean, feel free if you got any thoughts, questions, your own predictions for the election, feel free to do so. But I guess I'll start off before we get into anything. We got a lot to talk about tonight in terms of polls, each candidate's key to victory, Trump even visiting New Mexico. Are some of those states in play? I don't know. We'll discuss it. Controversy, the early voting numbers telling us a lot. The first thing I want to say is, and I know it's like it gets repetitive at this point. I say it a lot of conservative influencers say it, but it is very true. Do not get complacent, folks, in this election, because let me say this right now, okay? If you saw the early voting numbers out of, say, Arizona, or you're seeing the recent surge in the polls and you're thinking to yourself, there's no way possibly that Kamala Harris wins this election unless, you have a certain 4 a.m. Incident happening. Like, this might be a hot take, but Kamala Harris, and I'm sure you might agree with me, Ryan, absolutely, no matter what you've heard about the Trump momentum lately, does have a path to victory in this election. And I'd like to hear yours, but for me, it's very simple. It's if, especially, female voters are very bought into the messaging over abortion, this talk about a national abortion ban and Project 2025. And it's also known that female voters typically vote at a higher propensity than male voters, and college-educated voters vote at a higher propensity than non-college-educated voters. To me, Kamala still has a very clear path to victory if those kind of demographics turn out for her, and we do not turn out. That's exactly why turnout, I've been saying for like the past year, is going to be so important in this election, because whatever you want to say, oh, you can't win a national campaign based on abortion. Yes, you can, actually, because there's a lot of, well, we won't call them idiots, but we'll call them the sheep-minded in this country. They're a given for the Democrat Party. The question is, can we turn out our people to match it? And that's exactly why I say a lack of complacency is so important. But Ryan, your thoughts on that?
100%. I mean, everybody needs to take the time to vote. Vote early if you can. Get out there. Don't wait till Election Day. Or if you have to vote on Election Day, get in line before the polls close, because every vote's going to count. It's going to be so important. I mean, if you go back to 2016, all those Democratic voters thought a week out that Hillary Clinton was done. Yeah. I mean, she was going to be the next president. And I think a lot of Republicans thought it too. A lot of people thought it was over.
Absolutely.
I mean, you go back, you look at what the polling averages were for those states. I mean, Donald Trump was down 6 points in Wisconsin. I mean, these aren't even 1% apart right now. So it is so close. It is razor thin margins, and everybody needs to get out there and vote. And yeah, you can win on an hounding on abortion if you're the Democrats, because they did it in 2022.
Exactly.
They did it in 2022.
And our voters did not show up in high enough propensities.
No,
because
they got complacent.
Correct.
Everybody thought the red wave was coming.
Correct.
Everybody thought Dr. Oz was going to win in Pennsylvania and we were going to win in all these other states, and we ended up losing. And we should have won in Nevada, and we should have won in Arizona, and we should have won in Pennsylvania, but we didn't. And we have to make sure that does not happen this time around, because our country can't afford it.
Right. So that talk, and by the way, guys, it doesn't just mean make sure you vote, okay? Make sure your friends are going to go vote, make sure your family members, etc. Like, we need all the help we can get. And, Elon Musk has contributed a lot, but they still ultimately have been doing this ground game thing a lot more than us for the past several years. So it's going to take a lot of us to come together on that front. I guess that, though, you did mention it, kind of transition us well to talk of the polls and where those currently stand, because the last few, and especially the last week, have been very good for Trump. And what does that mean? We'll talk about in a second. But what are we seeing out of RCP and stuff like that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when Biden dropped out, Trump was up quite a bit in the RCP national average, which is just the popular vote. And Harris, after a couple weeks, ended up taking the lead, and she never let it go. Mm-hmm. She was up by a couple points just about the entire time until this last week. And Donald Trump, since the first time since I think it was August 4th or 5th, has the lead in the RCP national average. But we got to keep that momentum going, and we got to turn that into actual votes, because the polls, at the end of the day, they don't matter unless people get out to vote.
Right. And I think the conventional wisdom of the past several election cycles could be that, well, because the polls have historically always underestimated Trump, and if that's still true, and it's like, hey, we're basically winning according to the polls now, then the election should be a done deal. But this is, again, why I say don't get complacent, because I think, honestly, there's two possible outcomes, which is three, I should say. Number one is that the polls are still underestimating Trump the way they historically have. That's absolutely a possibility, and if that's true, it's a landslide election, like straight up, and that is within the realm of possibility. The other is that they could somehow be underestimating Kamala Harris. I mean, I don't know if I really believe that, but like, hey, if you were to do the roulette wheel, like, it is on there. Or thirdly, the other possibility, and I think this is probably where the truth is that the truth is somewhere in the middle. Right?
Yeah.
They are still underestimating Trump, but maybe not as by much as perhaps they used to. I think there's been a cultural shift where Trump voters are a little bit less shy to respond to the polls. But still, when you look at a place like Wisconsin and those driftless areas, I mean, they still, in my opinion, are very historically hard to poll. But I don't know. Any thoughts on that front?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think another worry for me is that the pollsters since 2016 and 2020 have been really embarrassed by their accuracy, right?
Right.
And they may be overestimating the, quote, shy Trump voter to make sure they don't get embarrassed this time.
Right.
And I think that's the biggest worry. When you see Donald Trump up by a point in North Carolina, about 0.5% in Pennsylvania, 0.5% in Wisconsin. I mean, these are inside the margin of error. Margin of error is probably 3-4 points in a poll. I mean, you could go a lot of ways here. When it's 0.5%, I mean, that's not a lot of votes.
So look, guys, like the point of this is not to doom by any means. I think in a lot of ways, the election is looking pretty good at the moment. It's just to say, I'm trying to come back to that central message that there's no reason to get complacent whatsoever. We'll talk about early voting numbers later. Some of them look really good. Some states like Georgia are kind of up in the air still. So we'll talk about that later. But first of all, that said, I think perhaps one of the best indicators of like a positive indicator for us in this election is the way liberals are currently acting both on the internet and in the media. Because I don't know if you've heard this, okay? The new conspiracy theory, and that's exactly what it is from the Kamala Harris supporters, is that, well, we'll just read this tweet from you. Okay, so this comes from host of the Jack Hopkins Show podcast. So shout out to him. He says he's a former Republican. I definitely believe that. But anyways, the tweet here reads, the polls are not, in fact, do you want to read it?
The polls are not, quote, neck and neck. They are not even dead even. This has been pure propaganda so Trump can whip his followers into a slobbering fit of rage when Kamala beats him by a wide margin. The polls have been influenced by billionaire backing Trump. This isn't rocket science. Do you believe that Biden beat Trump by the margin he did and then almost lost democracy to an insurrection attempt, and that for four years later it's even dead or dead even? You're smarter than this. You are. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, this is the same guy that was probably talking about how Kamala was doing so good in the polls in the summer. I mean, seriously.
No. there are billionaire investors out there that are actually rigging the RCP average in favor of Trump. And that is the pure reason. I mean, we take a look here. Let's see. Insider advantage. Trump +1. I mean, I'm pretty sure, right? That is a far-right insurrectionist, right-wing conspiracy group. Emerson, notoriously, a fascist Project 2025 backed poll. CBS News that has Pennsylvania as a tie. It's not a tie, as you know, according to that guy. It's actually the billionaires who have bought out CBS News. This is probably the funniest development of this election cycle is, the mainstream media this time around. I mean, don't get me wrong, still completely on Kamala Harris's side, but they sometimes have moments where they decide, okay, like we have to be a little bit objective, right? The polls are not looking good. This is not looking good. And then the response by the Blue Anon conspiracy theorists on Twitter has essentially been to say that, like, the mainstream media is too pro-Trump. You love to see it.
I mean, CBS News, I mean, that's basically the RNC, right?
Like, that is.
Like, I mean, are you serious? Like, you're talking CBS News has Pennsylvania to tie. CBS News, I don't go back to their, older polls. Harris is probably up 5 points a month ago in that state. I mean, this is ridiculous to even claim. And we've seen the RCP average slowly shift in Trump's favor over the last couple of weeks. But we also saw it slowly shift for Harris back in July and August. I mean,
yeah, what was it then? Was George Soros rigging all the polls?
Exactly. I mean, it takes a lot of polls and a big aggregate of polls over a period of time to create this RCP average, which is why it's pretty respected within the business. And, to make a claim like that's ridiculous. It is razor thin.
No, I think Nate Silver may actually be he's voting for Trump, as we all know. The only reliable man we can trust is Professor Alan Lichtman, according to this guy. This is the brain of the Blue Non conspiracy theorists. I mean, it's so fun. After all this talk about election denial, I mean, just wait and see what happens if Trump wins. Okay, you're gonna hear a lot of election denial. Here's another funny one though. This guy's been totally off the rails lately. This is Tristan Snell. He's a commentator at MSNBC. Amidst all the bad polling for Kamala, they finally found something that they think is on their side. It says, breaking, Trump is only winning by 5 in Kansas, which is a red state he carried by 20 points in 2016 and 15 points in 2020. If Trump's margin is only 5 in Kansas, then he's losing in Georgia, North Carolina, Nevada, and Arizona, and Florida, and Texas. Okay, so that's where their brain is. At this point, not only are they definitely not struggling in all the swing states, they're winning Florida and Texas. Now, it's very funny because currently in this, if you're kind of talking about polls or early voting data as a Trump supporter, you don't really have to make a lot of mental gymnastics to say it looks good for you, right? Just, hey, RCP average. This is an average of all the polls. Trump's either leading or it's very close to tied. And, usually the polls overestimate or underestimate Trump or whatever. But this right here, okay, like this is the type of mental gymnastics they have to do. And the funniest part about it is when you fact check here. So I looked at this already. So there's one poll they found that has Trump up by 5 in Kansas. It's the only time Kansas has basically been polled in the entire election cycle, except back in 2016, when you look at the few polls that did come out of Kansas, there was literally a poll that had Trump +5 in Kansas. Okay? So, like, if you can go one single poll and say, oh, look, this is going to predict the national election, I don't know. I find that to be absolutely and completely ridiculous. But I don't know. Any thoughts on the current state of political analysts, quote unquote, on MSNBC?
Well, to take one poll and try to run with it as the truth is ridiculous. Especially, you can look at this. Within 5 points and one, the RCP averages at 21 points in this specific.
So that's a final result.
Yeah,
final result.
Excuse me. Yeah, but you can see the other polls: 24%, 11 points, 12 points, 11 points. Looks like 17 points. You got to look at the average because them together are a lot more accurate than just one. There's a lot of really unreliable pollsters out there, and there's also a lot of really good ones out there too. And, Trafalgar Group being one of them. I know they haven't, surveyed Kansas this cycle, but, you look at their work in Wisconsin right now that I believe has it as a dead heat tie right now. Mm-hmm. And their margin of error is only about 3%. That's a pretty good poll.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess let's shift now to talking about that Rust Belt a little bit, because enough about Kansas. You know, this is the historic bellwether state. Is who wins Kansas is going to decide the entire election. Wisconsin, I mean, what are we looking at in the poll? Because for a long time, the polls in Wisconsin have been it's been like the bluest state out of those three Rust Belt states. And I don't believe that, right? Because you look back to 2020, it was the closest. Demographically, it is the most favorable to Trump of those three
100%.
states, because you have highest population of like white working class, non-college educated voters. You do not have a major urban area in that state that's as big as, say, a Detroit or like a Philadelphia, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, honestly, I will say this. I think we are going to win Wisconsin. And I think historically, the reason the polls in Wisconsin have been very underestimating Republicans is because those rural kind of like driftless counties are
100%.
hard to poll. But now you're saying that basically they're at a dead heat?
It looks about a dead heat in RCP. I mean, we're talking under 1% in the RCP average. 0.6 points is what it's looking at right now. And Harris was up for most of the late summer when she came into the race late, up about a point or two. And now Trump's up for the first time in a while since Biden was in the race. But Biden even led at certain points in the race in Wisconsin.
There were some polls that had Biden or Kamala winning in Wisconsin by like 3.
Absolutely.
3 points.
And I mean, we all know no matter who wins Wisconsin, I think it's going to be Donald Trump personally, but whoever wins it, it's going to be tight. It is going to be tight. It is not going to be a 5-point victory for anyone, in my opinion, but it's going to be tight. Trump's got the momentum right now, and the recent polling is looking slight favor to Trump, but it's under 1%, so it's so razor thin. So if you're listening in your Wisconsin, go out and vote.
A lot of low propensity Republican voters in that state too. Yeah,
100%.
So I'm looking at all the recent polls out of like this month, right? So Atlas Intel just came out. They have Wisconsin at a tie. Trump +1 out of Insider Advantage. Trump +1 in USA Today. Trump +1 Emerson. There's not a single poll out of Wisconsin, at least in RCP in the past month, that has Kamala Harris in the lead. And like I've been saying the whole time, I was pretty confident. Like regardless of what happens, I think Trump's going to win Wisconsin just because of those demographics. Like, don't worry about the polls. The polls have always underestimated us there, especially specifically for like a scientific reason, not just because I think we're winning or whatever. It's because like the population distribution is not favorable. But
well, yeah, I mean, in rural areas, you have a very low response rate to these polls too.
Exactly,
I mean, it's very hard to get in contact with people that are actually going to vote, and also it is hard to predict the low propensity white voter because they really didn't vote much before Trump came into play in politics.
Yeah, and they didn't vote in 2022.
And they didn't. Yeah, no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And we may have overestimated their effect in the midterms. And when Trump's on the ballot, they turn out in numbers like we've never seen before.
Right. So I think to me that's like Trump's a lot of these states I kind of look at what is Trump's X factor, like his key to victory, what is going to win.
Yes.
In Wisconsin, I think it's the demographics. The
100%,
demographics are
100%.
Actually favorable, just like literally who lives in that state.
Yes.
Is favorable to Trump.
I mean, they have one major area, like urban area, Milwaukee. That's it.
And it's not that big. I've been
it's
there.
Not
it's not
that big. It is not that big. And they held the RNC there.
Right. That is huge. Totally forgot about that.
That is huge.
That is
they held
big,
the RNC there. So I'd like to think we have an edge all across Wisconsin. I think Trump's doing well with union voters too. I really do. A lot of union voters in the Rust Belt.
Yeah. Okay, so going across the border now to Pennsylvania, there, I mean, actually we have early vote data out of there, right?
We do have some early vote data. Yeah, we can pull that up.
But the issue with Wisconsin, and there were some issues on the ground today. Some of you may have seen that on Twitter. I mean, the issue with Pennsylvania is that the early vote data, guys, don't freak out about this. It's a little hard to like look at clearly because my understanding, any Pennsylvanians can correct me if I'm wrong, is that there's not really mass like in-person voting in PA. Like you can go and turn in your ballot to a courthouse or go request or turn it in person, but they don't have this widespread, hey, you can go to a polling place and like vote in person a normal way early. So a lot of those votes are going to come on election day. But taking a look right now, I mean, of early ballots returned or in-person votes, according to this, the Democrats only have a 3-point lead. Is that correct? That is correct. Yeah. So that's not a bad margin to be going into election day in, right?
Yeah, no, it's not. I mean, we could also look there. I mean, 17% of the early voting is, only in. So it's very early in Pennsylvania. Hey, the Democrats, they have the lead. Yes. in Pennsylvania. There's a lot of other battleground states out there. This is probably the one that Republicans, I feel like, aren't doing the best in right now.
Really?
It definitely, I think so. I mean, I think some of the, but it's so early. I mean, it's 17%.
But you compare it to this day in 2020, because back then their early vote firewall for the Democrats was 1 million going into election day.
Yes.
I think right now it's what, 350 to 400,000.
Yeah, it's not a lot. I'm not going off of total raw number. I'm just going off of Republican versus Democratic ballots right now.
Right.
I think this is the one that we don't have the biggest edge in. But also, are we or the Democrats underperforming what they did in 2020? Absolutely.
No, I mean, I think, honestly, like, so I just said that demographics are going to be our X factor in Wisconsin. Pennsylvania, I see a couple of big things for Trump. And I honestly, this is kind of underrated. People forget this. That's the state he got shot in.
Yes.
When I've looked at this, I've thought about this. I said, okay, you know, when we're talking so much about turnout being important, about low propensity voters showing up to the polls, the fact that Butler, PA is where that all happened, that's in the western part of the state, the more rural areas where high amounts of Trump voters, low turnout, right? Sometimes depending, like that's going to galvanize energy. And you also have Scott Pressler's on the ground there. He really did a great job, him and a lot of other people, of closing that registration gap. Elon Musk is focusing in that state. I mean, to me, I look at it, maybe I disagree with you on this. I look at it, I see like the Republicans probably have put way more resources into PA than the Democrats. Like they've been trying a lot harder for it, and I think that's going to make the difference.
Well, I think if you look at the Trump campaign and many Republicans or people that are just analyzing this race, I think Trump and the Republicans feel really good about North Carolina and Georgia.
Okay.
I really do. I think they feel really good about that. I feel good about North Carolina and Georgia. Therefore, we can really go all in the Rust Belt. We can.
Right.
I feel good about the Southwest a lot better than I did in 2020.
I think the Southwest is looking the best for us.
I think it really is. I think the Southwest and
we literally have a lead already with early voting. Which,
yes, 100%.
Like, don't get complacent, but that seems to suggest that's a done deal.
And we're talking
at least Arizona.
in Nevada and Arizona both look great right now, in my opinion, for polling and early voting, as well as the rest of the Sun Belt out east to North Carolina, Georgia. I feel really good about those states, and you can really hound Pennsylvania because that's the tipping point state. That's what everybody's calling the tipping point state this year, and that's going to be the big one.
So here's a fun question. There are, I believe, 20,000 Puerto Ricans. Is that the number right? 20,000 who live in Pennsylvania. Is a comedian's joke at Madison Square Garden going to flip Pennsylvania blue? What are your thoughts on this?
Definitely not in Pennsylvania. 20,000 Puerto Ricans.
I don't know the actual. I just saw that on Twitter. Let me actually verify. Internet, don't believe things you see on the internet, guys. But PA Puerto Rican population.
Yeah, I mean, let's just hope this is not Donald Trump's Elian Gonzalez of 2000, where Al Gore and the Clinton administration decided to send him back to Cuba and piss off a lot of Latino voters.
Latinos make up 8% of the state's population, but it doesn't specify by Puerto Ricans. Okay, 486,000 people.
Okay,
so that's a lot more. I just saw 3%. Some random person say,
So about almost 4% of the state's population. Yeah, I mean, you see people. The only people that are pissed off. It's manufactured anger from the left media. That's really
I mean, like here's my thing about that whole situation. Is first of all, was it smart politics to let that comedian go up there and speak in your big rally like Madison Square Garden right before the election? No, right? No. I think it was... I'm not saying it was wrong. I'm not offended by the comedian's joke. Yeah, it probably wasn't smart to just create that kind of liability for yourself, and I think most people probably agree with that, honestly. But with that said, it's like, first of all, I think by this point, this week, it is too late to change minds. In my opinion, I think because of how prevalent early voting is now, and the fact that people have known Trump for like almost 10 years now as a political candidate, they're not going to have their minds shifted last minute because he offended Puerto Ricans or something. And the other thing I consider, okay, Hispanics in the chat, you guys can back me up on this, is you're talking about a demographic, honestly, that's kind of thick-skinned. I'm just saying, like Latinos in general, are they really the easiest people to offend? You go and you go to the You go to like the average Hispanic person in this country and ask them their thoughts on Latinx, they'll look at you like you're crazy. So I'm not sure if this is really going to make the biggest difference. I'm sure there are angry Puerto Rican liberal people that might be extra galvanized to go out and vote, but is it really going to make the biggest difference? And also, if you're the Kamala Harris campaign that's made a lot of blunders throughout, your time, you're wasting time doing this or that, is doing the stance of like white knighting for the Puerto Rican people really what you want to be the last closing argument in this election? Because I would argue it's an okay one for the Democrats, but is it really the ideal one?
No, absolutely not. I think there's a lot more ground they can make up than trying to make peace with the Puerto Ricans before the election,
right?
And trying to get them out to vote. They got a lot of work to do in the Rust Belt, because if they're going to win, they're going to have to get that, quote, blue wall that Hillary Clinton tried to build. That's really what it's going to be. I mean, they have to get the Midwestern white voter on their side. That's what the Democrats can be focusing on in this last week of the election. That's why they got Tim Walz as the VP candidate. They wanted the white working class voter to go with Tim, and they're not going to. I mean, nothing's showing that way. It's gotten worse in the Rust Belt over time for the Democrats. And I mean, the Rust Belt's going to be really red here in about 10, 15 years, I feel. But right now, I think it's going to go all red this election.
I think, though, what's also important to remember, guys, is since 2016 and even since 2020, Trump has made very, very substantial gains with Hispanic voters already.
Yes.
So even if you win back a couple percentage points, all you're doing is stopping bleeding of trends that already don't look good for you. Right. So I don't know. Another thing to consider there, maybe
100%.
Even with the Puerto Rican vote. OK, I know we got a couple of super chats and member chats, so let me read that. Shout out Justin for becoming a member. Shout out to Dollar for Dollar sending a member chat. Says both of you do a Coach O impression. Go Tigers. Would you like to go first?
Coach O impression, huh? Man. All right.
Go Tigers. That's not very good. That's very basic. Like it needs to be more sophisticated than this. But
go Tigers, we're gonna win Louisiana. Like I don't think...
No, that was a lot better than mine. Thank you, Dollar for the super chat. Zachary for $10. Thank you very much. Says just to help you remember, voting early allows ballot harvesters or ballot chasers. Okay, we don't like the term harvester. We say ballot chasers, campaign staff, for the record, to focus others for votes. Voting early prevents Republican candidates from wasting time on you. No, that's very true. That's a great point. Yeah, I mean, everyone, look, I would say in general, like my preference is I like to vote early, but not like too early, but kind of early, close to the election. Because it's like the problem, guys, with committing to voting on election day, even if you believe it's the best, is what if something happens on election day, right? Say you have a family emergency or work or something. You can't get to your car breaks down. Who the heck knows, right? So it's always nice to have a cushion of a couple days of like, hey, you can go vote now. And then if you can't make it that day or you're too lazy that day, you got the next day. And that's also, by the way, why I believe that, the hope for the Democrats is like, okay, well, the Republicans are all voting early, so none of them will vote on election day. But encouraging early voting actually expands the number of people who will vote for you, right? Because you will have a lot of lower propensity voters that if their messaging to them is just, okay, go vote on election day, and they're tired on election day or they're busy or whatever, they're just not going to vote. But if you're giving them multiple options and you're emphasizing, right? I got this flyer in the mail from the Trump campaign the other day that says President Trump wants you to vote early, right? Like they're openly endorsing it. You're gonna literally get a higher number of votes because there will be more people who say, okay, there's more options to do something, right? I don't have to show up on election day. I can do it. So it's not just smart for like personal reasons. I think it's smart for overall turnout. And I do think that it is something that may also help us, right? The common consensus, or I should say basically, I wouldn't worry too much about, hey, election day, less Republicans will show up to vote maybe, and that's true, because I think encouraging early voting and embracing it in the way that we have will literally just like increase turnout on our side. But what are your thoughts?
100%. I voted early. I voted on election day the first time I ever voted, but the last two times I voted early because it's more convenient. And also, what if something does happen? Right. Your car breaks down, family emergency, like you said, you get sick, whatever happens that you can't get to the polls. I say vote early and vote often. So go in and vote early on early voting. Bring your friends to vote. Bring your family to vote. Encourage people that have never voted to vote before. Everybody that you know, get them to the polls during early voting and on election day, because the more you bring, the more you vote.
Right. And don't do anything illegal.
Yeah, nothing illegal. Nothing illegal. Let me be very clear with that.
Okay. Ben for $5, thank you very much, says the overconfidence on the left at the moment reminds me of ours in 2020 and Hillary supporters back in 2016. Don't fall into that trap. Vote. Very true. No, yes. very. You know 100%. What? You're right. That is a great point, though, because they do kind of sound the way we did back in, say, 2020, especially, right? It's like we're losing by 15 points in the polls, but all the polls are rigged. You know, yep. they're all, you know, but which I think to a certain extent there definitely is political bias that goes into polls, but at the same time, it's kind of schizophrenic. Like, there is a legitimate science behind polling. It's just a matter of, like, do you do it accurately, right? And that's kind of the way I feel
there's definitely a legitimate science behind polling. And, you know, if you look at, you know, getting the number on the head is really hard. But if you look at the polls that are at least A-rated and good pollsters, they usually get within that margin of error they put out, which is usually 3.5%, 4%. They usually get within that. Now, that's a big margin, but
although I think 2020 there was a lot of
no, there was definitely some problems in 2020, but 2016, in 2016, yes. But for the most part, they do get within there. And I will say the one pollster I think that does the best job is Trafalgar. Trafalgar has really gotten within the margin of error.
They're considered right-wing nut jobs.
They are 100% considered right-wing. When you look
historic, like the past several elections, they've been a lot closer than...
Oh, they've been extremely close, yet everybody calls them right-wing and kind of just this biased pollster because they always have Trump better than everybody else in the polls. But at the end of the day, they've been more accurate than just about everybody else out there.
No, absolutely. Let me see if we got any more super chats here. Let's see. Vince, you are awesome each video. I appreciate that much. Darren, if you vote early, your votes end up in a ditch, says this one person. Totally disavow that statement. That is not true at all. And by the way, okay, that logic doesn't even make sense, because then if that's the case and Democrats typically vote early, do you think they're throwing those votes in the ditch? If that totally disavow, not true. Okay, not true. I mean, there are, yes, security concerns in general with our elections. Okay, no one denies that. I didn't say to go. I'm not encouraging or like saying I personally. Let me be very clear on YouTube. I personally would vote by, say, a drop box. Okay, I would not put my ballot in there. That's not my preference. Okay, but the idea that like all early voting is bad, like that doesn't even make any sense, because in that case, why would they encourage their own party to do it so much?
100%. And you look at when we've pushed early voting since 2020, it, like, you know, for example, for Virginia, you know, kind of did a 180 on what they were preaching for the runoffs in Georgia, the Republican Party. And it turned out very successful in a blue state. Push early voting, vote early, bring your friends to vote, encourage early voting, get that ballot in there as soon as possible so nothing can happen.
And think about this too, right? You know what? I'm not going to say it on YouTube, but like in theory, right? I'm just like, if you hypothetically were some type of evil genius who was trying to manipulate things, if you knew that all of the people for one party voted on a certain day and you wanted to engage in voter suppression, hypothetically, of course, in a hypothetical Minecraft world, that would be very easy to do because you know exactly whatever. If your members of one party are voting in a spread out time frame and it's kind of just like even the entire time and it's very equally distributed, it's a lot harder to, in this hypothetical Minecraft world, mess around or engage in voter suppression on a certain day if there's no certain one day you can go and target. And if you do like mess around with the other things, you may be hurting your own party. I'm just saying, again, we're talking about a hypothetical Minecraft world with this, but something to consider.
I mean, you know, we can even talk, you know, hypothetical world. Go back to, I don't know if anyone in the chat's watched House of Cards before. On election day, they released some kind of terrorist threat. Nobody wants to go to the polls and vote, and the person in office wins because nobody went out and voted. Right. All the people that they wanted voted early.
Right. Independent Free, I don't know what the rest of that title says, for $2, thank you very much, says, on CNN, Biden calling citizen voters trash tonight. I did see this, yes. He went out on CNN. We can pull up the clip right here. So Joe Biden, folks, like basically around the time the stream was starting, I think a couple minutes before it, went out and said the following. We can play the clip right here because of technology. All right, let's go here and take a listen. In his own words.
The garbage I see float.
Wait, this is a shorter clip. Let's play the extended one. All right, here you go.
Or Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware. They're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization of seen as unconscionable, and it's un-American.
So there you had tonight. Yeah, President Biden goes out and calls Trump supporters garbage. Your thoughts? I feel like I have a hot take on this, but your thoughts?
Reminds me of the basket of deplorables.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that. I mean, that's just, what a way to influence the right to go out and vote and just...
That's exactly what I'm saying. That's exactly what I am saying.
I think you know where I'm going with this.
Dark
I think
Brandon knows exactly what he is
He's
doing.
trying to stick it to the Democratic Party,
He is. He's been sabotaging Kamala the whole time.
He wants Trump to win.
He wants Trump to win. Okay, because he read that Trump will fix the ice cream machines, which, by the way... Funny story on that. I'm not even joking about this. You guys can look it up. Like a week after Trump tweeted out, when I am president, the McDonald's ice cream machines will work again. There was actually a settlement in court that it has to do with like copyright and privacy and stuff. But long story short, now the McDonald's ice cream machines will be fixed. So promises made, promises kept on that front. No, but yeah, in all seriousness, I mean, there's no better way to galvanize last minute more Trump supporters to go out and vote than to say this statement.
And Biden,
that's what it is.
Biden knows what happened. Like, I mean, I know he's kind of lifeless here, but he does know what happened in 2016 when Hillary made that statement. Like, he knows what he's doing here.
No,
he knows what we could talk conspiracies. I think that's a legitimate conspiracy that Biden wants to sabotage Harris.
Absolutely.
100%. Like, he does not want her to win.
Yeah. The funny thing is the few moments where he has undermined Kamala, whether it was putting on the Trump hat or when he did that press conference to interrupt her about the port strike and stuff like that, he's never been sharper. Okay, like he puts on his A brain.
Yes,
he put on his A brain. He puts on his brain and actually goes out. And
that's the most life I've seen in that man's eyes, probably since he was vice president.
Correct.
I mean, like he looks energized and ready to elect President Trump.
Correct. I mean, I think someone better check his ballot. I know he went to go vote. Was it like yesterday or the day before that? If I were them, I mean, I guess it's technically illegal to look at the ballot, but like, I'm very curious. Like, who did Biden actually vote for? And do we know that it was Kamala Harris? Do we actually know? Can we actually, like, I'm not sure.
Maybe he wrote it himself. I mean, like,
or he wrote it himself. Yeah, that's a possibility.
I don't think he voted for Kamala. I really don't. I think he hates her.
Dark Brandon.
I think Dark Brandon's real.
His revenge.
Yeah, no, he is going to watch election night with like just vengeance in his heart, looking to just take down Kamala.
Yeah, and look, that's not to say you shouldn't take his comments seriously, obviously. Yeah, no. But I'm just saying, the last time he said this, what did he say a couple weeks ago? I forgot the exact statement, but he said something very similar to this. If I'm remembering, we got to lock him up, right? He said we got to lock Trump up, and he's like, whoa, politically. And everyone said, oh, that was an accident. It's just like Sleepy Joe as usual. No, that was not an accident. No, he knew what he was doing, and he knew that the point of it was to be way over the top divisive because Kamala last minute was trying to angle herself as some type of like sensible moderate, and she wants to just to put a total sledgehammer to that by saying crazy stuff like this.
I haven't seen Biden this energized and this sharp the way he's been for the last month. I mean, literally since he's been vice president. Like, this is the sharpest he's been. Like, I mean, he is just ready. He's in campaign mode.
I think it was The Guardian or The Hill recently put out an article saying maybe Biden was the right candidate all along. I want to see what the ghostwriter honestly was on the article. But anyways, let me make sure we didn't get any more super chats here. The gift that keeps on giving, Biden out here sabotaging Kamala. Exactly. This is literally what is happening. Think of, if Trump does win, just because I think it's funny, when I list out the people I'm gonna thank, like Scott Pressler, Elon Musk, whatever, Joe Biden is gonna be on that list. Okay, Sleepy Joe gave the final the final push to Donald Trump.
You look at how beneficial he's been to the Republican Party because he made the Democrats look awful all campaign cycle, like up until he dropped out. And then it's like he switched sides halfway through.
Remember the QAnon conspiracy theory back in like 2021 that Trump was actually like running the country?
Yeah,
I mean, he was pulling the strings so he could get back in the whole time. I like that theory.
Like it's like I mean, it's like Biden was like a double agent like the past like year. Like he totally tried to sabotage his own campaign, dropped out, and now is trying to sabotage Kamala's.
Yeah, no, it's funny to see. It is really funny to see. Okay, with that said, let's get a little bit back on topic here to talk about, I guess, the last thing we said we were going to bring up with the election was where the early voting numbers are currently standing. And so here is some of the data for you guys. I will actually just pull it up here on screen. So for instance, okay, starting with Arizona, because this is the state that looks best for us. So this is both in-person early voting and mail-in ballot basically combined, as you can see. So usually, right, the way we're thinking about this is you want to go into election day not losing by too much to the Democrats. That's what the election's kind of come down to, because Republicans favor later voting and election day voting. Well, folks, right now, as it currently stands, in terms of returned ballots and early in-person voting, already, we still have a couple days to go. Republicans lead Democrats by 6 points by party registration in the state of Arizona. That's big. I mean, that should almost suggest that it's like game over. I don't know, but what are your thoughts?
I'm not ready to call it game over because it's not over till it's over.
Right.
But man, is it looking good. I mean, Trump's been up in the poll average for, most of the summer up until now. And now these early voting numbers, it's just showing, it's better than what I expected.
Right.
It looks so good. And like you're hovering over these numbers. Urban's underperforming. Rural is, I believe, overperforming right now.
Right.
I mean, they're overperforming the population. In the suburbs are turning out great. I mean, it's really beautiful to see. I think we have Kamala on the ropes right now in Arizona, and I think she's about to be done.
Right. And then, like, looking at this right here, I mean, not a lot of rural voters have voted yet, right?
Yeah, no, that's all voters. Then if you go up, that's the returned right now.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's actually over turnout. Okay.
Yeah, no, we're ahead of pace right now. We're ahead of pace, which is just incredible. And that's only 29% of the early vote-in right now.
And then look, like, the reason you shouldn't get complacent is, well, I don't know, maybe a bunch of Democrats magically turn up tomorrow. It can happen, right?
100%.
But
there's still 70% of it out there.
This day in history, I think what Democrats basically had these numbers flipped, right?
100%.
In 2020, Democrats were leading at this stage in the election. In 2022, they were leading. We're not looking at this right now and saying, oh, well, they're leading by less, like we're doing better. No, we are outright winning right now by 6 points in terms of the voting registration.
We don't even have to play catch up on election day. Let's just keep our lead.
Right.
Let's just keep our lead because the lead is beautiful right now in Arizona, and just keep piling it on. Just keep piling it on because we turn out on election day anyway. So we'll just add to that lead.
By the way, has Kamala even visited Arizona lately? I don't think
they had to have just started pulling their resources out of there.
Nevada, I think she's been to a couple times. But
yeah,
it seems like Arizona Democrats have basically given up on.
Yeah, and I think if you look at a lot of pollsters or political analysts and consultants right now, I think they think Arizona is probably Trump's best state right now.
Right.
It really looks good for him. It's looked good for him the entire way. It looks way better than it did in 2020. And that's his best state right now. I really do feel that way, especially with the early voting. That makes me feel even better about it, even more so than North Carolina.
I think the goal at this point really should be now, not only obviously Trump win, but also can we get Kari Lake over the finish line?
Yeah, man, that's going to be tough.
It's going to be tough.
I'll tell you
but by these margins, it's possible.
Yes.
It is possible.
The early vote, if it stays as good as it's looking, and then we turn out like we do on election day, Kari Lake is absolutely not out of play, and she's been down big in the polls the entire way. But she's closing up those margins, and if these hold true, she can definitely win.
Because realistically, how many points do you think she's running behind Trump? probably like 5, right?
I was going to say anywhere from like 3 to 6%.
Okay, yeah, so let's say 5. If Trump's winning by 6 right now, and then on election day it's like 5 or 6 that he wins Arizona by, I don't know if that's happening. That's still like a pretty, out like big estimation. But if these numbers hold, I mean, Carrie Lake does seem like she can pull it off, right? It's going to be hard. She's the underdog in this race, but she seemed like dead on arrival about 2 months ago, and now I think it's genuinely a competitive race.
There's some late momentum. There's definitely some late momentum, and I wouldn't rule it out, especially with these early voting numbers.
And that Senate is going to be very important, guys.
Huge.
No ticket splitting.
Huge.
Okay. Don't just go in and vote for Trump and don't vote for any other candidates, okay? Like, we appreciate it, but just don't take it split, right? Make sure we get the right Senate candidate. If you have a Senate race, House race, like that's still going to be important to balance of power.
I mean, wherever you are, I mean, the balance, like, depending on how the congressional, the Senate races go, that's going to depend on, that's going to totally affect how effective Trump is as a president. If he wins, because if we don't have the Senate or the House, I mean, good luck getting anything done the first 2 years.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously. I mean, because there's a lot of Republicans, rhinos out there that are going to go against Trump, and we need every seat we can get in the House and Senate. So no ticket splitting. Go out there and vote red.
Correct. Okay, now I guess let's stay in the Sun Belt and take a look at Nevada.
Yes.
Right? So in terms of early ballots returned, we're only down 2, which, if again, I believe, right, if you compare to this day in history, is way better than last time. But what do you make of these numbers?
Well, the early vote right now, we're up 2 in the early vote right now, and I really like what I'm seeing. I mean, we're outperforming what the total raw vote will be, or the registered vote will be.
So this is the actual numbers, and this is
early.
The estimated
all
numbers?
I believe is the registered. I believe, if I'm reading this correctly, all is the registered voters.
Okay.
So a lot of votes out there to still be counted. 25% of the early vote in. But I like what I'm seeing so far.
We are in the lead.
We are in the lead in Nevada.
Sorry,
we are in the lead.
wrong.
Yeah. No, you're good. All in the lead. We're in the lead in Nevada, and that's even right now with more women than men having voted. And, I mean, we're doing good. We're doing good in Nevada, but Nevada's always a state I'm cautiously optimistic about.
Right.
I was so confident in Adam Laxalt in 2022. Everything was pointing that direction. The polls, the numbers, everything was pointing that way. Laxalt can't get across the finish line. It seems like every cycle we're talking about a Republican winning in Nevada, and it just doesn't happen.
No, I think the reason I think we're so confident about Trump in the Southwest right now is a couple different things. But first of all, it's that Hispanic vote, right? Because the realignment the past couple of years, how substantial the support he's gained. I looked at these numbers before. I think in 2020, Biden won. It was about like 70% of the Latino vote in Arizona, somewhere close to there. And now you look at a lot of these national polls, Harris is close almost to 50-50. It's like 55-45 with Trump Latino voters nationally.
Yep.
And so if we're going to assume it basically splits about down the middle, maybe Trump wins them outright in that state, maybe he doesn't, but if it's close enough to 50-50, already there, that's a demographic you've lost. And then you look at a state like Nevada, the culinary unions, the Reid machine is not nearly what it used to be. No tax on tips. That was a policy tailor-made for Nevada, and I know Kamala copied it, but people know that as the Trump policy. I think all these little things are going to make the difference.
Yeah, no, I definitely think every vote's going to count, especially in a state like Nevada where it's, I mean, there's not a lot of people there. Your vote just means a little bit more.
Right.
It's going to go a lot farther away, especially when it comes to that Jackie Rosen Senate race. It's going to be really tough to get her out, but we got to keep pushing the polls.
Right. And now that I'm reading this correctly, okay, this is a strong indicator. We saw this in Arizona too, right?
Rule.
Turnout is higher in rural areas. It's over what it's expected to be, and it is below what it's expected to be in urban areas. You just hear that out loud. That seems to suggest like that's a Republican
100%.
Victory in an election, right?
100%.
So that's definitely very, very interesting. All right, let's move now to North Carolina and take a look at what we're seeing over here. Another great state for us currently, because last I checked, Republicans had the lead. They still do have the lead, yes. So early voting in North Carolina at the current moment, Republicans enjoy a 1-point lead over the Democrats. And you take a look, there was worry about how the hurricane situation would affect turnout. I've heard stories on the ground of like angry Republicans basically crawling out of the hills to go and vote, early and all this stuff. But looking at the rural turnout right now, 39% is what is expected. It's exactly at 39% right now. So
Suburban's outperforming just by 1%, not by much, but suburbanites are turning out too, which is good. And because I think that plays in our favor this cycle, I really do. And it's razor thin in North Carolina right now in the early vote. I mean, you could see it's 34-33. It is tight. It is. But
we are
tight.
up.
We are up though. We are up. And if we're that close in early voting, I feel really good about how it goes on election day.
Absolutely. So, I think at this point, Nevada, Arizona, North Carolina looking very good in our favor, right? So if we fill out the electoral map there, that would put us at 252, right? So we're getting a lot closer. So now let's go and look at Georgia, and hopefully this number stuff is not too boring to you guys, but I think it honestly is pretty good information. So taking a look at Georgia, this is a state I think, that's actually not too bad. Let's see. What are we looking at, Ryan?
Looking at a dead heat.
Yeah.
Looking at an absolute dead heat. But you know what? If it's a dead heat in early voting, I feel pretty good about election day.
Right. I will say this is a number that's a little bit concerning, right? 56% of early voters so far have been females, 44% of male. So this is a state where it's like, I'm not going to say, hit the panic button, we're losing, but you are going to have to catch up on election day. It's looking like in Georgia,
it is,
which is not a position you necessarily want to be in compared to these other places. But.
And not to mistake anybody out here that, just because you see 42% red, 42% blue, that does not mean all the blue voted for Harris, all the red voted for Trump. That's just registered voters. So,
and how are the independents flipping?
Exactly.
But,
where the independent, that's a huge gray space right in the middle of all that. Where are they going? And also, suburban women that are registered Republicans, how are they breaking the undecided suburban women? How are they breaking? Because they didn't break good for Trump in 2020.
Right.
How are they breaking this time around?
Right.
Are all 42% of that is all that Trump vote, especially with 56% of those votes being women so far?
But here, I think, is the good statistic out of Georgia, right?
Yes.
So you look at all voters versus early voters so far. The white vote is outperforming. Hispanic vote underperforming. Look at that black vote.
Massively
underperforming slightly.
Underperforming. I think that has to do with a large lack of enthusiasm for Kamala Harris
I think that's
in the urban
real,
areas.
And you know what? I'll tell you guys this. So, there's all this hype over like black men, especially young black men. How are they feeling? This is anecdotal evidence, okay? But you guys can watch today. It just got published. I did a video with James Klug, like a street video in Atlanta, asking people like, hey, how you voting? We debated some liberals. It's a great video. You guys should go watch it. But all but like one group, and I'm not making this up, of young black men in the middle of downtown Atlanta were big Trump supporters. Like they wasn't like, they were very enthusiastic about it. Several of them expressed an intent, like their plan to vote. Like I think one guy literally said, I'm going to vote Saturday for Trump. That could make a slight difference. Like I still think Kamala is going to win the black vote pretty overwhelmingly, but will she, even though she is a quote unquote black woman, will she be able to match Biden's astronomically high black turnout from 2020 that you saw that put them over the line in Georgia? I do not think so. I don't think it's enough to put him over the finish line this time because there's no enthusiasm for Kamala Harris. And also, every cycle since Trump has started running in 2016, we've seen the black vote, percentage-wise, margin-wise, shift towards us in our favor overall. I feel every year, I think it's getting a little better for us. And I think when you see 28% of the vote black, I don't think they can count on 27% of that being for Kamala Harris. Right.
Maybe when you used to be able to count if you had a black candidate on the ballot, you could probably count for almost all of that going towards that candidate. But now with Donald Trump on the ballot, black voters like Donald Trump.
And how do you think that Kamala, for instance, compares to Raphael Warnock? Because he obviously kind of won in 2022. Yes. But honestly, I think even he has a lot stronger appeal with the 100%. Black voters in Georgia than Kamala,
100%. I think, he had more. I think he's going to have stronger appeal overall. And also, I think Herschel Walker may have turned off some of the black voters.
I think he just turned off voters.
I think he turned off voters in general. But he was kind of, I don't know if he was just seen as like a guy just put in there because of who he is. But I think he turned a lot of people off, and he didn't get the black turnout that I think Republicans were hoping for. The people that put him in that position.
He really didn't get any.
Donald Trump gets. I mean, I think Donald Trump outperformed him in the black vote. Mm-hmm. So I expect Donald Trump to do very well in the black vote in Georgia. Probably better than 2020, better than 2016. I think that number is going to look good for him, and I think Donald Trump probably wins the state of Georgia by 2-3%.
The only reason I'm nervous about Georgia is because I've just seen how it's happened the past 3 times, and it's almost been demoralizing, right? Because it's like 2020, you saw what happened in the presidential race, and everyone knows about that. But then there was the runoffs, and then there were the midterms, right? But I think it's important also to remember, like, Herschel Walker did lose, but I'm pretty sure, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Every other statewide Republican won in 2022 in Georgia, right?
Yes.
So this is not, despite all the talk about how blue it is going, and yes, it is now basically a swing state. Mm-hmm. It's still Georgia at the end of the day. It's still
Georgia,
and I think that's something to remember.
Look at how well, for example, in 2022, everybody on the ballot there, the Governor Kemp. Look at how well he did in that election.
Yeah,
he did great. He outperformed Herschel Walker by a mile.
Right,
and that's a white candidate. You know, that's a white candidate. He wasn't incumbent, but I expect Trump to have Governor Kemp numbers and not Herschel Walker numbers.
Well, I think it's going to be somewhere in the middle, honestly.
Yeah,
maybe like, because what did Kemp win by? Like 5? Was it
5? I think Trump. I mean, I think I just said it. I think Trump's 2-3% winner in Georgia.
Yeah. I think that's about right. It's about right. But yeah, I mean, that's what we're currently looking at. And a lot of the states we've done so far have pretty like accessible early voting where you can go up to the polls. We're about to look at Pennsylvania, where the early voting system's a lot different. It's mostly mail-in. Like, you can technically do what's called absentee voting in person, where you take your ballot to a courthouse, but it's not really like, oh, the polls are open, go vote. Although there were some issues with that today. But what are we looking at right now? So
nothing that I love, but you know, hey, we're expected to lose in these early voting races. I mean, we just are. I don't love the numbers I'm seeing right now, but at the same time, I mean, that's 17% of the early vote in. It's not much.
Well, the raw numbers too is what you got to like. I think they're
yes, absolutely.
So in 2020, they're talking about this blue firewall right now in Pennsylvania, because in 2020 they went into election day with a 1 million vote lead on Republicans on this statistic we're looking at right now.
Yeah.
Right now it's about 3. It's almost 400,000.
Yeah, it's not much. I mean, now granted, there is very little of the vote in right now. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, it's only 17%. But, you know, like you said,
that's also because they don't have a lot of like in-person early voting. That's
I expect,
so the majority of this is going to be election day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And listen, you know, I expect this to be down relatively big in the early vote, but we turn out on election day anyway, especially in a state like Pennsylvania.
Right.
And I think, you know, Pennsylvania is razor thin, and I don't love the numbers I'm seeing because I don't like to see that we're down, but also at the same time, it's a lot better than the numbers in 2020.
By 600,000.
By way better. Better numbers in 2020. We're definitely outperforming our 2020 numbers. I was hoping to do a little bit better, but honestly, look at it. You can't be disappointed in it.
Republicans, I think, still don't trust vote by mail.
No, 100%.
They trust early in-person voting, but vote by mail. And that, like I said, that's basically PA. Like, you can turn it into a courthouse, but it's not this big thing where it's very common. You know, it's an election day state still by their system.
100%.
Which is very ironic because they talk so much about expanding access to voting, but early in-person voting that Republicans might favor, let's not do that, Governor Josh Shapiro.
No, they want that big lead going into Election Day in Pennsylvania, and they got to see if the Republicans can catch up. But I think we can definitely catch up, especially the gap is a lot smaller than it was in 2020. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I think we close that margin going into Election Day. I don't think the Democrats grow that margin. I really don't.
Right. Okay, last thing we'll talk about in terms of the states here is, you know, because this is just a fun topic for people. I almost don't want to encourage this type of behavior, but this week, okay, very interesting decision. I don't know if it's the decision I would make, but, you know, maybe that's why I'm not running for president. Donald Trump is doing a rally in New Mexico. And there's a lot of talk lately because apparently his internals, they're saying, are looking very good in New Mexico. Virginia, the last several polls that have come out have shown the race basically dead even. Even some good polls out of Minnesota, potentially. What are your thoughts on those three kind of like blue states that are in a landslide scenario, we can win, but they're sort of far out of reach? What's your read on that? And do you think it's smart for Trump to be going to New Mexico this week?
I mean, why not try for it? But also at the same time, when you have 7 days or 10 days left in election, every hour, every rally has to be strategic.
Right.
It has to be strategic because every county you go to is going to make an impact riding into election day. Personally, I probably wouldn't have gone to New Mexico. I probably would have focused on Virginia.
Right.
If I was going to focus on one of those, like really going for a long shot flipping blue, because even out of those states we just mentioned, New Mexico is the longest of the shots between New Mexico, Minnesota, and Virginia. They'll probably all go blue, but I think New Mexico probably gets lost by the biggest margin for Trump.
That's my fear is I don't mind rallying in blue states.
No, 100% not.
Reasons, but I don't. And the last week, okay, and I don't want people to think I'm counter signaling Trump. This is just my thoughts on it. I don't want to wake up on Wednesday morning, or probably realistically like Thursday or Friday morning, right? And feel like we could have done more because Wisconsin, let's say, came down to like 10,000 votes, and we were in New Mexico. Is all I'm saying. I think
you closed the gap in New Mexico by 5,000 votes.
Right. I mean, although if you're doing a rally, let's say on the border of New Mexico, where I think would be a good place is like Southern Virginia, near North Carolina,
100%.
But in the area, but you also kind of go for both places. But I don't know. Any chance you think in either New Mexico, Virginia, or Minnesota?
New Mexico, I think the margin is just too wide. I think even if Trump spent every day left in the election in New Mexico, even if he started a month ago, I don't think he's got a shot at flipping New Mexico personally. He can get that margin down to where it's like, oh, maybe we got a shot at it in 28 if we play our cards right. But
or maybe we're wrong, right?
I hope I'm wrong.
Michigan back in 2016,
yes.
we did not believe we had a single shot, and he won the state.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll look stupid.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that's the case. I'm just saying, like I said, I think it's rational to say, even if we can win New Mexico, we don't want to wake up on election night, like after 100%. Election night, and see the map not being like the core map not having delivered.
100%. Because at the end of the day, it's, the popular vote doesn't win. The Electoral College does. And we got to be really strategic about where we spend time. And personally, New Mexico, I wouldn't spend time in because I don't think there's really much of a shot to win. The Real Clear Politics average is about 7% right now. I really, like that's pretty far out. Now, granted, that was about Wisconsin, Pennsylvania numbers back in 2016, but I don't think there's much of a shot.
Their internals are showing something.
They must show something. Personally, though, I think, if you wanted to go for one, I think it'd be Virginia. Big strategic location is because it's right by North Carolina, not far from Pennsylvania. Makes it very short shooting, back and forth. Also, you can tie in rallies for North Carolina supporters in Virginia. But I think Virginia's got a real shot. It was kind of wide gap. It reminds me a lot of, 2021 with Governor Youngkin now. And, Youngkin was down by a pretty significant margin in the polls. And then all it took was one slip up. And all of a sudden he was governor of Virginia because those polls started tightening in the last couple days. Right. And that's what we're seeing in Virginia right now. The polls are getting tight. I mean,
and we also have seen in both elections in what was it? McAuliffe was his name?
Terry McAuliffe.
Yeah. Both kind of collapsed very late due to their utter lack of charisma.
Yes.
I guess it's kind of similar in that regard.
And I really think out of all the states that are kind of long shots, Virginia's the one I'm looking at. One, because we saw what happened in 21, but two, there is such a trend right now of being down by a significant margin in Virginia. And now it's gotten razor thin. And
it's 13 electoral votes.
It's big. Yeah. And it's also an old Republican, it's an old Republican stronghold.
True.
It's a state that was just red through and through. And it was, more recently lost in the Obama elections, but it still hasn't been that far off. We just elected a governor there a couple years ago, and he's relatively popular.
Right.
I think we got a great shot in Virginia as far as our long shot. And I'd be pretty surprised if it went red on election night. But I actually think there's a realistic shot just looking at the trends that have happened in the polls. I mean, we're talking 5, 6, 7% margins for Kamala Harris down to just 1 or 2%, even.
Yeah,
even in some
I mean,
states.
I think honestly, in terms of winning it, it's fool's gold. I think we're gonna wake up on like the next day. I think it'll be probably go to Kamala like 3 to 4 is what I'd say.
You think so?
Like in the end, it came pretty close.
Yeah.
But she still won. But you still look at the state like, hey, well, I mean, the future, maybe we have a
absolutely.
shot there.
And also, Trump rallying in Virginia or doing good margins in Virginia, closing that gap there definitely helps out in all the congressional races in Virginia as well.
Absolutely.
And also a long shot Senate race, but we do have a Senate race there.
Mr. Hung Cow.
Yes, Hung Cow.
I was saying since last year we were gonna have a Hung Cow VinceDao collab, and I that's my fault. I never reached out. We should have reached out to the Hung Cow campaign. The funniest thing I think would be if so, and like to me, I for some weird reason I can kind of see this happening. Is if Tim Walz' home state, okay, Minnesota, just like says, screw you, okay? You claim to be a football coach, but you actually, let's play the, I have the clip.
Yes.
We gotta play the clip here. Here you go. This is him saying, okay, we don't have, it says, Tim Walz says AOC can run a mean pick six. Okay? This guy claims to be a football coach. Says he knows all about ball, yet he does a Twitch stream with AOC on Sunday during the NFL games, playing with AOC on Twitch because like this is what NFL fans do, right? They're playing Madden when they're watching. But anyways, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm a pretty big NFL fan myself, and I have never found myself streaming on Twitch or playing Madden when you have a full slate of NFL football on a great
I wonder
Sunday
who won this
afternoon.
game, by the way. Anyone who has seen this stream. AOC
I haven't
probably
watched
beat
it.
him, I don't know if I've ever seen two women play Madden against each other, but my bet's on AOC.
And I mean, I think AOC wins honestly because if Tim Walz is trying to run pick sixes, I mean it's not a good strategy.
AOC can run a mean pick six from the alleged football coach, and I can call an audible on a play. Wow. You pressed X or you pressed I don't know what the PlayStation equivalent is there.
Yeah, I mean he's just. Oh man, I mean, you go from claiming to be a football coach that took this team. What was it? Like they claimed it was like winless to the state championship or something.
By the way, he was never the head coach. He was like an assistant coach or something.
You know what came out? He originally claimed he was the head coach. Then it came out, and they're like, "Oh, he was the assistant coach." Now it's that he was a volunteer. Did you see this?
I didn't.
It's now. They're now saying he's a volunteer because apparently he was never actually an official coach. He was a volunteer, and I think I read something that. They had to, excuse him from his duties because he got a DWI or something. I don't know. Saw some claims on Twitter about that. Not sure how true those are, but he was a volunteer supposedly instead of an assistant. They just keep going further and further down this rabbit hole. This guy just lies.
Just a complete sociopath.
He's a pathological liar.
The guy is bad. All the talk about Tim Walz. He's such a nice guy.
You know what's funny is everybody, all these Democrats, all these leftists talk about Donald Trump's this pathological liar. Yet they could never tell me what he's lying about. And now. They put a candidate up here, Tim Walz. All he's done is lie.
Yeah.
I mean, he's lied about his resume like a thousand times over again.
The guy is so obviously like this crazy sociopath.
Oh, yeah.
In some cases where he's lying, it's very confusing what the immediate political gain really is of it. Like when he said his kids were conceived by IVF and they weren't. Is there really a tangible political difference between saying I support IVF versus my kids were conceived by IVF? It's like, is that necessary really politically to say? No, but the guy just is like, he enjoys lying. I really believe that about him. And I'll tell you what,
I feel like they lost IVF voters because you claim to be a part of this community. And now you're not. Like you already had them on your side. Now you're losing them. Like maybe Biden was in charge of putting Walz up there because like it's just more sabotage. Because I mean, he is just an awful, awful VP candidate.
Yeah, you can't tell me that Josh Shapiro, because he's Jewish and pro-Israel, would have been a worse pick.
Well, they pissed off the Palestine voters. They would have been better off just pissing them off straight up and picking Shapiro. They already pissed them off anyway.
Right. No, that is true. All right, let's listen, guys. This is Tim Walz's final message. By the way, he was definitely like a football coach. Okay.
8 days to go. This election's already started. People are voting across the country. And so you know what it means. This is where I've got to do it, huddling up a little bit here. Time for a little bit of a peck talk. Look, we got to admit it. This game is tied. 2 minutes left on the clock. We got the ball. We're driving down the field. We're doing the blocking and everything we need to do. And I know you got a saying around here that came from Bo. The team, the team, the team. And boy, do we have the right team.
This guy definitely coached football, guys. Yeah, look at me. I understand football analogies. By the way, he can run a mean pick six.
He can run a mean pick six, and I also
go ahead.
I also saw maybe actually you know what, play it, 'cause I think he goes on to say it here.
So all gas, no brakes for the next 8 days. Plenty of time to sleep when you're dead. Our time now. We're moving this thing over the next 8 days, an inch at a time, a yard at a time, one door at a time, one phone call at a time. One of those door knocks and one of those interactions, because 1 or 2 extra votes per precinct in the state of Michigan will make Kamala Harris the president of the United States. Michigan, let's put that in terms you know. We'll tell them this. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Please welcome the next president of the United States, Kamala Harris.
All right, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, you know, for a former football coach talking about moving the ball inch by inch at a time, it's not really good.
It's just like it sounds so. I understand what they're trying to do, but it's look. I was a football coach. Here's a football analogy, guys.
Yeah, no, he's awful. He's really awful, and you know, it just shows the lack of enthusiasm. Because behind him the entire time, you go to Trump, it's all Trump signs behind him. Yeah. It just says vote. It just says vote. It does, like, it's no Kamala 2024 signs. It just says vote. Like, there's no enthusiasm for this campaign. It's all manufactured.
Absolutely. Rami says he gives me weird karate instructor vibes. That's very true. I told 100. What does he mean by this? Not going to specify, but yeah, he 100% does. Coach Walz, guys. He's not Tim Walz. He's Coach Walz. He
would have been a great coach at Penn State, I feel.
You said that. I didn't say that. Yeah. Known for their football program. Yeah, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So we've talked a lot, guys, about the current state of this election. Tim Walz is out there trying to appeal to men and young men because he plays Madden with AOC on Sunday during the NFL games. That's very relatable to young men and stuff. But now I guess the question of what do we think is going to happen in this election? Because I did technically put the words prediction on the thumbnail, so I feel obligated to actually discuss it. I don't know. Start with you. What's your read? Final numbers? If you want to pull up the electoral map, we can.
Let's pull up the electoral map. And you want to start with the Senate? Or you want to start with the presidency?
Let's do the presidency. Senate is secondary. Yeah.
All right. So I think Arizona's Trump.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Georgia, Trump. North Carolina, Trump. And this is, I think, the meat and the potatoes of the election. I think Michigan is for Kamala Harris.
Okay.
I think Wisconsin's for Donald Trump.
Demographics, right?
Yep, absolutely. I think, and we're already at 270, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we pour it on Pennsylvania. And I think that's such a coin flip.
Nevada.
I think Nevada. I think we got it. But honestly,
I did not. So back in the summer, I had a lot of faith in Nevada, just on the polls.
Yes.
And then I thought to myself, wait, but the polls have always overestimated Republicans in Nevada. But then I saw the early voting numbers, and that were literally leading there. Yes. And now I'm like, okay, well, I guess I am confident in Nevada this time then.
Yep. I'm always cautiously optimistic on Nevada because we always get overestimated there.
Right.
But
the early voting numbers are hard to argue.
And I mean, last time, Black Salt should have won that Senate race 2 years ago. And then what was it? The election day, was it like a rainstorm or something? Drove everybody, it was awful for election day voting. But I think we win Nevada. In Virginia, Michigan, I think those are most certainly in play. In Minnesota, New Mexico, super, super long shots. But I think that's more of a margin, popular vote challenge right there.
Mm-hmm. So, all right. Not bad. So here, my map is pretty similar. I will say, I think this whole talk about like New Mexico, Minnesota, Virginia, for me is, by the way, ignore the safe lean, whatever. Like I'm just kind of pressing buttons there. But to me, that's fool's gold. Like I don't believe in this idea that we're gonna flip. The final margin, I'm sure, will be surprising. It's
gonna be tight,
right? But I don't like believe we're gonna flip it. I will say, based on what I've seen from the Arab population polling in Michigan, I honestly think by very close margins that we can take Michigan. So that's what I'm going to add to.
All
the
right,
map.
so you're a little more.
We're basically looking at 2016 plus Nevada. I think
I would absolutely love that.
Couple reasons I say that, but yes, Michigan is the bluest of those three states,
Yes.
so that's like the hardest to flip. But I look at the historical trend. Typically, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania have all voted together because it's like however the white working class is feeling, they're going to feel across the board. To Detroit, I think a lot about the way that the black vote has dipped off a few points for Kamala Harris. So I think like you're not going to see 2020 performances out of Detroit. I think that when you look at the white working class, and especially those auto workers and stuff, Kamala Harris does not have the same appeal that Scranton Joe did, right? So you lose a couple points there. Add that up, plus that Muslim issue, which is crazy because 2020, I don't know what the final margin was, but polling wise, it was like 2-1 Arab Americans for the Democrats. 2024, Trump is leading them by 2, according to the polls. So to me, even if that splits even and given the rest of the trends, I think it's just enough to win Michigan by very close. It is probably the Rust Belt state I have the least confidence in, but I don't know. I'm gonna go bold with my prediction. I think we carry it very slightly, but I don't have a lot of confidence in that. Michigan definitely is gonna be the hardest of those three states.
I like your prediction a lot more than mine.
Really?
And well, I hope that's what we see on election night. I really do. But in hell, I'd love to add Virginia. That'd be great.
I don't buy it. I think it's gonna. Like I think said, 3 to 4 points.
if we got a crazy red wave, Virginia's definitely in play, but it's going to take a lot to flip a state like that. I think
in the landslide scenario, yes, Virginia, New Mexico, Minnesota, maybe Colorado go red, but
absolutely.
I don't think you may see like a convincing. I will say I think whoever wins the Electoral College, just based on the way states vote together, probably gets over 290 or over 300. But in terms of margins, I think what's going to prevent a Trump landslide is literally just female voters. That's it. Because there's too many of them out there that are abortion, Project 2025, that will be kind of literally like the blue firewall against a sweeping victory for Trump. But I do think at this point we have what we need. But don't get complacent again.
And I know we talked about as far as where Trump's been spending his times, and I mean, shoot, Trump's been spending his time in some really blue states in the last couple weeks. Specifically, he spent quite a bit of time in New York too, whether it was in the Bronx barbershop or at MSG this past weekend or the Bronx rally this summer. And
second district, right?
One that helps in its proximity to Philadelphia. A lot of people from Philadelphia can take that train ride into the city, but also, the keys to Congress could be held in Long Island right there because they're in the surrounding New York City areas. There's like 5 just toss-up house races that are going to be really important to our balance of power.
Right.
100%.
That said, really quickly, I will also give you a prediction for the Senate map. If I can find it. Do I have to just Google it again? Let's see. 270 to win.
If you hit Senate right
there. Oh, here you go. Now, I will say, currently, I mean, you see it right here, right? Republicans are basically guaranteed 51 in the Senate. It's a question of how high we can go. The map is very favorable to us. And on some levels, it is kind of disappointing, honestly, that we did not field better candidates because even if the Senate candidates were running in lockstep with what we expect Trump to do, that should be like 53 to 54 at the very least. But instead you have a situation where in Nevada, a state where currently there's a lot of talk Trump's going to win, people seem to think Trump will win. Sam Brown, right, the Senate candidate there, a guy I like, has no shot at the current moment. He's way underwater. Kerry Lake, last minute, just because the numbers are so good in Arizona, maybe she pulls out something, but she's a huge underdog at the current moment. Pennsylvania, I don't even know who our Senate candidate. Oh, McCormick. Okay. I don't know. Maybe he has some type of shot, right?
I thought for the past few months, Dave McCormick, the numbers were looking really bad.
Yeah.
This last week and a half, 2 weeks, man, he's tight right now. He is tight. And
I think Eric Hoved, he just took the lead, right, in Wisconsin? Or he's at like 1?
It's tight. I mean, it's been back and forth the last day or two. I think Baldwin and the RCP average is back up, but it's only like by like 0.2.
But we've talked about, right? Wisconsin is a state that underestimates Republicans.
I think it's going to be the tightest state.
Driftless area.
I think that's going to be the tightest state. And, if I want to go bold here, I do think we lose Arizona. I think we lose Nevada. And I think Mike Rogers, unfortunately, doesn't get it in Michigan.
I agree. Yeah. He has run a decent campaign.
He's run a decent campaign. Seems like a great guy. It's a hard state to win in.
Right.
But I think Wisconsin or Pennsylvania, one of those we're going to flip. I really do believe we're going to flip one of those. I'm not sure which one.
By the way, Ohio is going red. Okay.
It's tight. It's tight. Sherrod Brown's relatively popular.
But it's all hype. It's a red state now. Like Sherrod, I'm not too worried about that, being honest.
With Ohio, I'm cautiously optimistic. It is a red state. I feel really good about it. I think we do win Ohio. But also, I look at a guy like John Tester in Montana, who has managed to hold that seat for my entire life. Right. In just such a red
early
state.
In this race, Tim Sheehy was like struggling, but he now just took the lead.
Yes. Tester's
I think this is the year we finally take down Tiny Tester.
Yeah, we're
I
finally
don't even know
gonna.
If he's tiny, but we're calling him that.
We're finally gonna get him. But I mean, gosh, it took a few cycles where we should have had him. Right. He was a great candidate in that state, and Sherrod Brown's been he's not a bad candidate in Ohio. People in Ohio relatively like him. He's still up in the polling right now. I think we do flip it, but it is going to be really tight. And I also, if I had to choose one, I think Dave McCormick gets across the finish line in Pennsylvania.
So? Yeah.
I really do. I think it's 53. And honestly, I mean, just looking at this map, honestly, even 53 is kind of just disappointing looking at it, knowing what's there.
Yeah, because, I mean, think about this in theory, right? If you're just following a good election night map for Trump, you're looking at 57.
A near supermajority.
Yeah, you're looking at a supermajority, but
even a decent night, if Trump won in, an alternate universe, would be a 54, 55 seat kind of Senate right there. And in the
end, it could very well be 51. Probably 50. I think 52.
I think it's 52. I think it's 52, and I know I predicted 53. I'm being optimistic there, but I mean, man, it's disappointing to think that it may just be 51. I'd be very disappointed in an election night if it's only 51 because there are some rhinos out there that are going to hold us back when it comes to the big time votes.
But guys, look, this is the problem I think the party will face post-Trump, which is, and I know the talk from I won't even say just like anti-Trumpers, but I know Red Eagle calls them electabros, or he used to back in the day, is that like Trump is holding down the GOP, right? Trump is just rambunctious, this and that. But what you're seeing also, literally, I don't think there is a single Republican candidate in this entire cycle who is outrunning Trump anywhere. Am I wrong on that? Maybe Hung Cow in Virginia, but I'm not even sure what the polls say there. In the vast majority of cases, every GOP Senate candidate is underperforming Trump. Yes. And this is an electoral problem we're going to have after he's gone, which we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, which is the new coalition of Trump voters would vote Republican if you stuck the ballot in front of them, but they're not high propensity voters, right? They're not really enthusiastic to vote for any of our Senate candidates or congressional candidates, and that's a problem. I don't know how you fix or change that.
Yeah, it's whoever is the nominee in 28 for the Republican Party is going to have to find a way to drive out the voters that Trump found that never really voted before.
Right, or win back suburban
white people.
Or kind of balance both. I don't know.
Or tap into demographics that we're kind of gaining momentum in, whatever it may be. And that definitely changes the map, too. That changes the map completely. If you're going the more suburban route, the Rust Belt's a little less out of play, and then you bring back in Virginia, New Mexico, and Colorado, and states like those. But
well, that's why, honestly, I think if Trump wins, JD Vance, but it's funny. Before I saw him as the VP or as running mate, I liked the guy. I never thought he had a chance at being like a national candidate like this because of the liabilities of him. Like I knew about him, he like the far right, whatever things he said in the past, most of which were honestly like based, but I understand nationally, like it's going to be a liability. But seeing him since and the way he's handled being the VP, I really think he could do that, but that's a bridge to cross when come to it. I think he can retain enough of the Trump coalition with like white working class voters. He has that appeal, while also, yes, all his past comments about abortion and gay marriage and stuff will hold him down. But what I've also found or kind of observed is that just based on his like personality and youth, there are suburban women who tend to like him just because he seems like a really nice, like disarming guy. He doesn't have that personality liability that Trump has. So I don't know. In the future, he may be a good candidate, but we'll talk about that later. I think it's way too early to be talking about that when we're talking about 2024. But
definitely,
that's just what's been in my head recently. But all right, we'll get to super chats now and probably wrap up the stream. Any last thoughts though on the election itself?
I think we covered just about everything, but I think a House win for the GOP is very in play. I think we get it, honestly. I really do think Trump going to these states that are, quote, out of play is definitely going to help those congressional races there. I really do, especially when you have, 4 to 5 toss-up races in the New York City area and him doing those rallies there and spending a decent amount of time, and him being a New Yorker, him going there is going to help him out in those Long Island races and the 2 just north of Westchester there. I think that's definitely going to help him out a lot. There's 5 seats up for grabs there, and we're definitely in play to take all 5, which would go huge towards the balance of power.
Absolutely. All right. We're going to get to super chats in a second, guys. So, feel free. Any thoughts you got on the stream, we're reading them now. So it's greatly appreciated. Feel free to super chat. But lastly, I will remind everyone, programming alert, we will be live on Election Day. I'm converting the living room into a studio. We're going to have professional graphics and everything. It's going to be a great stream, okay? So, I'm sure most of you guys are going to be flipping channels on election night, going one place, this place. But be sure to stop by and say hi. We will be live for election night. And we're making preparations, okay? We're making preparations. It's not going to look like we are in a cave in Afghanistan. Okay, we're putting together a good stream, so be sure to tune in. Probably will be live starting around maybe 6-7 p.m. Eastern time, maybe earlier. I don't know. Stay tuned, but we will start that evening. Okay, that said, let's get now to our super chats here. Again, feel free to do so, guys. XJ Cherokee Bear for $10 says, I've been warning people that Harris may get elected because of 3 a.m. mail-in ballots and suburban white broads who hate Trump and are angry that Roe v. Wade was overturned. True, right? This is why we've been saying don't get complacent. This is totally true. Yes. And by the way, I will say, like, we did the street video in Atlanta. Again, go check it out on James Klug YouTube channel. But the woman problem that Trump has is very real. Okay, literally, every single white woman we talked to besides one, all voting for Kamala Harris, all for the same exact reason: abortion and Project 2025. Like, whatever you think of that propaganda, and yeah, it is propaganda, it has been effective, and it is a concern. And at this point, I don't think in this election cycle, we're even going to win those voters back. We just have to make sure we vote at higher propensity than them. And that's the key of not getting quote unquote complacent. That's exactly what we mean.
100%. It's a real concern, and don't get complacent, because I think a lot of Republicans got complacent in the midterms in 2022,
right,
and we lost a lot of those races because of Roe v. Wade and suburban white women.
Right. XJ Cherokee Bear for another $5. Thank you very much. Says, I've been warning people the same way that Corey Feldman warned people about blank in Hollywood. Look, he's a very peculiar guy. All right, we're gonna leave it at that. But Wasserbottle for $5 says, "Hey guys, I'm Jeremy from D-Day Cobra, and I don't know if I want to read this because it's gonna get clipped." But he says, "And I'm still less blank than Tim Walz." What a super chat! Thank you for the $5, Wasserbottle. Thank you very much. And some would argue it's true. Some would argue it is true here. But anyways, let's see. Dexter's Lure Lab actually brings up a great point. He says, did Tim Walz, or this is summarizing what he's saying, did Tim Walz have a role to play in the George Floyd autopsy? I've never thought about that, but it's a genuine question, because a lot of shady things happened with that autopsy for sure.
Absolutely.
Got changed last minute, and
it is bad for
I just accidentally played a Real American Politics video. It initially, I think the original, was it coroner's report, concluded he mainly died of drug overdose, fentanyl, all that, and then the family had a private autopsy done, quote unquote, and that said it was by murder, and that's now what they've run with the entire time, and this has never been really discussed since. Very, very interesting. But all right, last call for super chats, guys. We will wrap up the stream here very soon. Let me make sure I did not miss any, but let me shout out a couple of our recurring viewers in the regular chat. Shout out to MacTac23 for becoming a channel member. Appreciate it very much. Texas Legend, think I've seen you in here a couple times. Good to see you again as usual. And all right, let's see. I believe we are all caught up. Michael says Rap W. Yeah, I had we had his video. We had his video on YouTube, and I accidentally played it here. Let me see. Can you guys even hear this?
Like, I am not exaggerating when I say
you guys can hear this. Very, very funny. Well, Trump is turning Arizona red. Okay, so true. Breaking from Real American Politics. All right, guys. Any last thoughts, or else I'll probably wrap up the stream here, Ryan.
Looking forward to election night. Looking forward to being here with you for the show, and looking forward to breaking down all the numbers and seeing a big red victory.
All right, guys. With that said, again, join us on election night. We'll probably do a stream the Monday before election night. I'm thinking too, like the pre-coverage stream. So tune in for that. But yeah, all right. Until next time, guys. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. Be sure to leave a like on this stream. Let's get the stream to 200 likes before the end of the night. God bless. Have a very great night. Make sure you vote, okay? If you're not voted yet, make sure you have a plan to vote. Make sure you know where your voting precinct is, when you're going to do it, how you're going to do it. Check your oil, okay? Check your tire pressure on your car, all right? Do all that stuff. And make sure you know how to get an Uber to the polls if it's not working. I'm just saying. Okay. All right. That said, good luck to everyone. See you guys later. Have a very good night. Thanks for tuning in.